I mean, to my mind, that ought to be prosecutable. I mean, you're not even allowed to give a kid an Advil in school without parental permission.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
You won't believe what went down when a woke student tried to take on Ben Shapiro during a Q&A session. Picture this, a crowded auditorium filled with eager students and a few faculty members, all waiting to hear Shapiro, a master debater, tackle the issues of the day. It all began with the student trying to play the trauma card, a classic move from the woke playbook. They asked Shapiro about his family's Holocaust history, aiming to draw parallels between historical trauma and modern-day grievances.
Kind of I don't know much about you, so I have a series of back and forth questions, if that's okay, just before I ask my question. So do you come from Holocaust survivors, or are you a Jewish family that didn't?
So my great-great-grandparents arrived here. A lot of our extended family was killed in the Holocaust, but our immediate
your
family...
great-great-grandparents, but not your grandparents.
Right.
Now, if you know anything about Ben Shapiro, you know he's not one to be swayed by emotional manipulation or flimsy arguments. His great-great-grandparents did indeed arrive in the US, and many extended family members were killed in the Holocaust.
Do you have friends whose grandparents were Holocaust survivors or anything like that?
Of course, many of them. Yeah, I've helped write memoirs of Holocaust survivors.
Yeah. Their families are kind of messed up, right? My family is very messed up.
I mean, if you go through a trauma like the Holocaust, I would imagine
they teach that trauma between generations.
But the students attempt to use this as a stepping stone to discuss intergenerational trauma, and its supposed justification for current societal issues fell flat.
Trauma, very often, in a lot of circumstances, is passed down. I mean, I know some kids of Holocaust survivors who turned out fantastic, and some who didn't. I mean,
Yeah. Okay, so you are officially woke. That is what wokeness is about. It's like, people's grandparents or their great-grandparents were slaves.
Shapiro didn't miss a beat. He acknowledged the horrors of the Holocaust and the real trauma it caused. But he swiftly dismantled the student's argument, pointing out the fallacy in equating historical events directly with today's inequalities.
If the idea is that history has consequences, of course that's true. That's not wokeness.
Yeah.
That is not wokeness. What wokeness suggests is that fundamental institutions in American society
it doesn't.
Yes, it 100% does.
I ran Elizabeth Warren's campaign. I helped organize her volunteers around here.
According to Shapiro, acknowledging history's impact does not mean endorsing the idea that all current disparities stem from past injustices. This is a critical distinction that the woke brigade often fails to understand or deliberately ignores. The student, clearly rattled but determined to push their point, shifted to discussing the broader concept of wokeness. They attempted to argue that wokeness is about recognizing and addressing historical traumas passed down through generations. Shapiro's response was sharp and precise.
I am a representative of wokeness.
Okay, well,
and that's this is all it is.
Well, I
when I went to go get my first tattoo, the guy had lightning bolts and 88s tattooed on his neck.
He clarified that while history undeniably has consequences, wokeness isn't just about recognizing past injustices. It's about claiming that these injustices are ongoing and systemic in a way that absolves individuals of personal responsibility. This is where Shapiro shone. He highlighted that wokeness often leads to a victim mentality, where individuals blame their circumstances entirely on historical events rather than their own actions.
Now it's my turn. Your definition is inaccurate. The reason your definition is inaccurate is because any sentient human being would acknowledge that history has consequences.
Right.
But if the idea is, but that's not what wokeism is. Wokeism is a different thing. Wokeism suggests that all inequalities of today are attributable to not only historic injustices, but also continuing injustices in the now.
He gave a powerful example. Just because someone's great-grandparents were oppressed, it doesn't mean that person is justified in making poor life choices today. Personal responsibility and decision-making are crucial for overcoming past traumas and achieving success.
Silent Cal, Calvin Coolidge's administration. Do you know about the Great Mississippi Flood back in the 1930s?
I understand that American history is filled with racial evil.
Yeah. And that causes some intergenerational trauma, which affects people's ability to be,
So let me
effective,
okay.
things like that.
Fine.
The student, visibly frustrated, tried to counter by talking about systemic racism and its effects. They brought up historical events like the Great Mississippi Flood of the 1930s and its racial implications.
And that all disparity is attributable to discrimination.
Like that, but a
not just
conservative.
that. Not just that.
A conservative is the only person.
Not just.
I want to know why. Why is it that conservatives are the only people who define it like that? Why are conservatives the only people?
Okay, so
Shapiro listened patiently before delivering another knockout punch. He pointed out that while historical injustices are real and have left scars, they do not dictate the outcomes of today's individuals and groups. He emphasized that many groups who have faced severe oppression, including Jews after the Holocaust, have managed to achieve significant success through resilience and good decisions. Shapiro's argument was clear. While history affects us, it doesn't determine us. He accused the woke ideology of using history as an excuse for current failures rather than a lesson for growth. This is a crucial point that resonated with many in the audience. It's easy to blame the past for our problems, but it takes strength and accountability to look forward and take control of our own destinies.
we're going to have to stop here because this is going nowhere. But
what's up?
I'm going to have to stop with you because this is going nowhere. All I'm going to say is this. To
No,
sum up,
I just am trying to understand your perspective.
On
Just one more second.
On a fundamental level, you're shifting definitions to avoid the consequences of your own argument. And if the idea is, final point, if you are going to hold on, if you are also.
As the student continued to fumble, Shapiro made one final, devastating point. He asserted that the left, particularly the woke left, focuses too much on victimhood and not enough on solutions. He criticized them for bringing up historical grievances without offering tangible ways to move forward. Instead of discussing practical policies or personal responsibility, they prefer to wallow in a narrative of perpetual victimhood.
If the idea is that traumas of the past invariably bleed down into the present, that does not explain why certain groups that have been historically not only marginalized but slaughtered in mass genocide are some of the most successful groups in our society. So if the idea is that past trauma always equals current inequality, or that my actions in, say, robbing a convenience store are attributable to bad actions that happened in Alabama in 1930, the answer to that is no. Don't rob the convenience store. The only way that you're going to be able to break the chain of history is to make good decisions. What people on the left don't like to talk about is actual solutions. What they like to do is bitch about problems that existed 60 years ago and blame those for failures to solve them now.
The audience erupted in applause. Shapiro's ability to cut through the emotional rhetoric and focus on facts and logic was on full display. He didn't just humiliate the student, he exposed the flaws in the woke ideology that prioritizes grievance over growth and accountability. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.